Let's talk about the reproductive system and specifically the male reproductive system. So in humans or in any animal, basically if there is sexual reproduction, then it is what's termed biparental, meaning there are two parents that give some of their genetic material to their offspring. This means that the offspring is neither exactly like one parent or the other because it has genetic material of both parents. This means that each of us, of course, are going to die. None of us lives forever. But if we have offspring, then our genetic material ends up continuing through our offspring. So the term that is used to refer to sex cells, so your sperm and egg collectively, are called gametes. There are gametes that are produced by both parents. Zygote is the name of the fertilized egg. Zygote is the name of the fertilized egg. And a fertilized egg is fertilized, meaning that the sperm has combined with the egg, and this is the beginning of the new human. So when you think about the two gametes, you have one that has motility, meaning one that can move. This is the sperm. So sperm, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but sperm have a tail, and that allows them to be able to move freely about. Um, the parent that produces sperm is genetically male. The parent that has a Y chromosome is genetically male. All right. So males have a Y chromosome and males or males produce sperm. The other parent has an egg, right? And so the egg contains nutrients so that when the egg is developed, is fertilized, then there's something for that zygote to consume as it's growing, and before it starts to get more nutrients from the genetically female parent. Females will provide shelter for the growing embryo. So the shelter is mom's body. They will provide prenatal nutrition of the embryo. So basically, baby feeds through mom. When you're talking about the reproductive system of the male and the female, there's some pretty obvious differences. So one of them is that the parent that is producing the sperm, the genetically male parent, will introduce that into the female body through the penis, which is the copulatory organ that it's referring to. Um, yeah, through the penis. So the penis is introduced into the vagina, which is the copulatory organ of the genetically female parent. The genetically female parent will produce the eggs. It'll receive that sperm. Once that sperm, sorry about that. I have too many things happening in my computer. So the genetically female parent will produce the eggs, it will receive the sperm, it'll allow for a space for that zygote to grow. As it grows, so it provides space for the union. As it grows, it'll need nourishment. So the female parent or the genetically female parent will nourish the offspring. So here's a overview of the reproductive system. You have your primary sex organs and your secondary sex organs. The primary sex organs are the gonads. Well, that's the term that means primary sex organs. These are what produces your gametes. This is what produces the eggs and the sperm. So your gonads are testes in your genetically male people and ovaries in genetically female people. Your secondary sex organs are those that are other than the gonads, but still you need them for reproduction. So in the males, you have this a system of ducts that we'll go through a little bit later. You have glands and you have the penis, which actually delivers the sperm to the female parent. In a female, you have the uterine tubes, you have the uterus, you have the vagina that receives the sperm, and then you have um, the harboring the uterus that harbors the developing fetus. There is external genitalia and internal genitalia. External meaning that you can actually see it because it's on the outer portion of the body. And then you have genitalia that is located inside the body that you cannot obviously see. So your external genitalia is located in the perineum. The perineum is basically what we cover up when we are wearing underwear. That is the quote unquote private parts. And your internal genitalia is, yeah, located in the pelvic cavity. Secondary sex characteristics. So these are the features that we can actually see that helps us distinguish those genetically male from those genetically females. These are the characteristics that actually develop during puberty. So once an individual goes through puberty, whether they are male or female, they will develop pubic hair, axillary hair, which we already know that the axilla is the underarm. So that's that underarm hair. The scent glands will start to develop, and this is why they start to smell like grown people when they're little, because these glands start to produce. And then the voices change, right? So voices change at puberty, and they can start to sound more male, more like an adult male or more like an adult female. In particular, males will start to develop facial hair. They will have more hair that is more visible and more coarse on the torso, especially the chest, as well, and the limbs. And they'll start to develop a more muscular physique. Your females will have a different distribution of body fat. So you'll have your breast will also start to enlarge. The body fat will start to deposit in the hips, in the thighs, etc. And the female body will appear relatively hairless, especially in comparison to males. So here is the anatomy of the male urogenital system. And yes, you will need to know all of these. So your urinary bladder sits in the pelvis. This is your pubic symphysis. So remember that this pubic symphysis is part of the pelvic girdle. So pubic symphysis will protect the bladder from the anterior portion. Just deep or inferior to that, you have your prostate. So you can see here that the urethra will pass directly through the prostate. So again, and we'll definitely talk about this a little bit later, but as the prostate enlarges, so if a male has prostatitis, if he has BPH, if he has prostate cancer, that enlargement can encroach upon the urethra and close it off so that it makes it hard to empty the bladder. So if you know an elder male, or if you've come in contact with an elder male that has trouble with urination, more than likely they have a prostate issue, whether it's BPH, prostatitis, or prostate cancer. As was previously mentioned when we're talking about the urinary system, the urethra is the tube that will lead from the bladder to the outside of the body. In males, the urethra is much longer than in females because the urethra goes through the penis, and that is how it leaves the body. Females obviously don't have, well, genetic females don't have a penis. So this urethra is going to be just as long as the distance from the bladder to just outside the body in the perineum. All right. You have the penis that surrounds the urethra. You have the glans penis at the tip of the or near the tip of the penis. The foreskin is what is circumcised. Those who are circumcised, it's the foreskin that is removed. You have the scrotum, which is the tissue or the skin that houses the testes. The testes are basically where the sperm is created. You have the epididymis, which is the beginning of the tube that that the sperm will use to exit the testes as they are mature and when they're ready to be ejaculated. You have the epididymis, you have the vas deferens, which is another tube that will direct the sperm toward the outside of the body. Again, you have the prostate gland. You have another gland called the bulbourethral gland, and we'll talk about the functions of these glands a little bit later. You have the ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct will allow for the product of the seminal vesicle to meet the products of the testes, so the sperm, and that will create your ejaculate that is going to exit the urethra and into the female's body, and that is what is going to meet the egg and hopefully be fertilized, of course, if they want that, of course. And the rest of the anatomy, you have your intestines here. This is the large intestines, the rectum and the anus. So you can see everything is relatively close together. And here you have your ureter that of course is feeding the urine into the bladder. This is what looks like an anterior view of the same thing. So your urinary bladder, oh, maybe this is posterior. This actually might be posterior. But anyway, the ureters that are feeding urine into the bladder. This is the bladder. You have your testes, epididymis, vas deferens that feeds the sperm into the rest of the ejaculate. You have the seminal vesicles that creates part of the ejaculate that meets the sperm, the ejaculatory duct. You have the ejaculatory duct. You have the bulbourethral glands that also secretes material into the ejaculate, and that leaves out of the urethra through the penis, through the glans penis, which is toward the tip of the penis. All right. This is considered the root of the penis. So the part that is closest to the body, there, root of the penis, and then the body of the penis is the rest of it. All right, so let's talk about androgen insensitivity syndrome. So first things first, androgens are the general term for male hormones. testosterone and the testosterone analogs. Insensitivity means that something is not sensitive to something else. So in this particular case, this person has a syndrome where their body is not sensitive to testosterone. So what happens is you'll have a child that develops into a female with all female secondary sex characteristics, but they don't menstruate when it's time, when it's time. So they're developing all of these characteristics, breasts, hips, etc., around the time of puberty, but they don't menstruate. And so, of course, if they're developing these secondary characteristics, then it's expected that they will eventually menstruate. So if they don't, then they need to go and do further testing on the person. What they will find in this particular syndrome is that they actually have testes, but the testes are still in the abdomen. They have not descended. And when they do genotyping on this person, they'll find that the person is actually an XY chromosome. And you should remember from a couple slides ago, if a person has a Y chromosome, they're considered male. But in this person, because they have the Y chromosome, they're genetically male, but they have these female sex characteristics, secondary sex characteristics. Now, the reason is because the testes that are still in the abdomen are actually producing a normal amount of testosterone, but remember, we said that this is an androgen insensitivity syndrome. So they're producing a normal amount of testosterone, but the cells that have receptors for testosterone, the cells that normally have receptors for testosterone don't have the receptors. So the cells cannot respond to that testosterone because the receptors are not there. So the external genitalia, these secondary sex characteristics, will develop as a female, even though, or as though, no testosterone was present. In these people, you will not have a uterus, therefore, you will not have menstruation because they actually have testes instead of a uterus, so they won't menstruate because there's nothing to menstruate. So that is the androgen insensitivity syndrome. Yes, you definitely need to know this. Prenatal hormones and sexual differentiation. So when a zygote is fertilized, or an egg is fertilized and the zygote forms, the zygote cells start to divide, they are sexually undifferentiated. So at that point, they are neither male nor female. Well, genetically they are, but when you look at them, you cannot tell the difference until the gonads start to develop. And that doesn't start to develop until about 5 or 6 weeks of this gestation. And what develops are these gonadal ridges. As the gonadal ridges start to form, there's actually 2 sets of ducts that are adjacent to each gonadal ridge. You have a mesonephric duct called the Wolffian duct. You have a paramesonephric duct, which is called the Mullerian duct. Males have the mesonephric duct. So if this is a genetic male, then their mesonephric or Wolffian ducts will develop into their reproductive tract, and the other ducts will degenerate. In females, just the opposite is going to happen. You're going to have the paramesonephric duct or the Mullerian duct that'll develop into the reproductive tract, and the Wolffian ducts will degenerate. Let's continue this on the next video.